Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Hello, this is Wayne Bennett. This is our 31st episode, and I'd like to give a shout out to Doug Lowe up in Webster County. Doug checks in with me every once in a while. He's a former athlete at Woodrow Wilson High School in Fairmont State. And say, Doug, and today's guest, he's an activist, philanthropist, altruist, friend, Mr. Pete Torrico. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Thanks for asking me.
Let's start at the beginning. I mean, you grew up in Beckley.
Born here.
Bowling Edition, I guess?
Bowling Edition. Born here, yeah.
Okay.
Moved into Bowling Edition when I was 18 months old.
What kind of activities as a kid were you involved with growing up through high school?
You know, Bowling Edition was a great neighborhood. It was a baby boomer neighborhood. Believe it or not, on Mankin Avenue, where I live, 109 Mankin, we had 14 kids in our graduating class on Mankin Avenue. Now, think about that. That's a half a school bus on Mankin Avenue alone. So it was absolutely a great neighborhood to grow up in. I mean, it was just It was a baby boomer neighborhood.
I delivered papers out through there for 4 years. Orchard Avenue and Glen Avenue and
Dorcas
and Mankin and some of the families I can still remember on Mankin. I mean, I remember the Torrico family, the Somalas, the Millers, Dr. Dunbar,
the McNishes.
Yeah,
right
McNish,
there. Yeah, Coach McNish.
Casino
on the corner.
Yeah, lived up the road. Walkers lived up above there. They had a morning paper and an afternoon paper at that time, and it was
a Democrat paper and a Republican paper.
That's exactly what. What about sports? Any organized sports or anything you played in?
Well, everybody in the neighborhood played Little League. You know, Little League was such a big deal when we were growing up, when it was Elks Little League, and it was ideal for us because we could walk. You know, it was just a hop, skip, and a jump, and we walked to practice. And Pinecrest Farms were like our playground.
Uh-huh.
You know, we all played over at the farms and walked to Little League to practice and walked to games. And, we always had a ball game going on somewhere in the neighborhood.
Well, your dad coached a little bit.
Dad coached, and so did my uncle, yeah.
Yeah, your dad coached the Pirates?
No, I played for the Pirates, but Mr. Casino was my coach. Dad never would coach me.
Oh.
So he coached the Indians with my uncle.
George,
yeah. That's right.
And I can remember Tigers coach was Sipkowski. Petrantazzi was my coach, the Braves.
The Braves.
And it seemed like everybody that coached, their names ended in a vowel.
You're exactly right.
And what about in high school? What kind of activities were you?
Really, I wasn't that active. I got very lucky when I was in high school. As a senior, I got a job with Bud Spears at Business Supplies. And at that time, if you remember, Wayne, in Woodrow, some kids got out at noon, some got out at 1, some got out at 2, some got out at 3, some got out at 4. My senior year, I got out of school at 12 o'clock, and I went to work with Bud Spears at Business Supplies, myself and Ken Weaver, and we worked at Business Supplies, and I was so fortunate to have a mentor like Bud Spears who taught me business, taught me how to sell, and taught me a lot of things about life. And at that point in my life, I wasn't into sports. It was about working and learning, and I learned more from Bud Spears at Business Supplies than I ever did in school.
Now, you've always kind of been into cars. What kind of car did you drive in high school, or did you have a car?
Well, I didn't. I had an English Ford that I had for a few months until I rolled it. It was a $50 car, and it wasn't much of a car. But later on, I'm still into cars. I love cars. Can't get enough of them. But I didn't have anything good back then. If you remember, not very many kids drove their cars to school. It was just the wealthy kids who did, and I always rode to school with Dad, and then I walked to Business Supplies every day as soon as I got out of school to work. And I did that every day and I worked there the last half of my senior year for Bud.
Yeah, you're talking about driving. I was lucky enough. I had a 1958 Chevrolet that I paid $130. My brother paid $130 for, and he primarily gave it to me to haul my mom around. She never had a driver's license.
Yep.
And I would haul guys to school. That thing was a truck anyway, and we would. I charged them $1 a week, to get
little gas money.
Yeah, and of course, gas back then was only like 25 cents a gallon or something. But I had to make some money. So you started working in your junior year or
senior year?
Senior year.
Yeah, I worked my first job when I was 15. I worked as a bag. Well, the first job I had was counting pop bottles at Atkinson Supermarket, over on the corner of Johnstown and Vance. I worked there. We had to get a work permit, and I worked in there. I think I made $0.25 an hour. But I was the guy that when you came in the door with your 3-cent pop bottles, I had to make sure they didn't have any chips in them. And then I sorted them, whether it was Coke, Dr. Pepper, Orange Crush, or root beer, into the right case, and then took them to the back of the store and gave the people a little slip that they took to the cash register and got 3 cents a bottle off of their grocery bill. Then I advanced to a bag boy, and that was a big deal there. So, yeah, you got a nickel more an hour for being a bag boy.
I can remember those days at Atkinson's. Usually, when I was going up there, Buren and his wife worked back in the butcher department.
That's right. It was Mr. Creed.
Yeah, sometimes she'd work the front, and then they expanded and added kind of a hardware area.
They did. That was after my time. I only worked there one summer. I worked there one summer, but it was a good learning experience.
You graduated from Woodrow Wilson in 1967. What kind of music did you listen to back then?
We listened to everything back then. It wasn't any country music. You listened to WWNR, which later, believe it or not, I worked 9 months at WWNR as a salesperson. But that's, we listened to AM. And you got to understand, 67, we were the last class to graduate from the park facility. Mm-hmm. We had 460 in our graduating class, and we still have reunions every 5 years. We've got a real active alumni, although the class is getting smaller. We've lost last count, we're over 120 that we've lost in our class, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, I was looking at your Facebook page, and most of it's devoted to people that have passed away.
It is.
It is. And well, that's great. You guys are getting together every 5 years. Maybe next year, when you get ready to have yours, we can do a podcast.
We may do it. It would be fun. We've got good classmates. And we had we called it a mini reunion this past summer, which we just got at Calcino's, drank a few beers, ate a pizza or two, and we had 14 of us show up from all over that just came into town just for one little evening. So we had a good time. And at those meetings we talk about our reunions, what we're going to do. So yeah, we're ready for next year.
Now, how did you get connected with the JCs, Beckley JCs?
I'm going to go back again to Bud Spears. When I went to work for Bud, he was very active in the JCs. He was past president of the Beckley JCs. At that time, you had to be between the ages of 21 and 36 to be a JC. So I was, 18 years old working at Business Supplies, and Bud says, if you're going to work for me, you have to be active in the community. And I will pay your dues, and you will be an associate member of the JC. So I was an associate member from the time I was 18 till I was 21. And so I had 3 years under my belt. An associate member does everything except vote and have, you get all the privileges. But I got to learn a lot and met a lot of guys in there. And then when I turned 21, believe it or not, I was elected president. And at that time, I was the youngest president ever in the United States of a local JC chapter. But I'd only been really an official member for 3 months, although I had been an associate member for 3 years. So that was, but again, the JCs were a great organization, young man's organization, and later they lowered the age to 18 and raised the age to 40. And the JCs are just, in the United States now, are just about gone.
I was wondering what happened to them, because I know you guys were really active, and I can remember going to Mountaineer football games on a JC bus there.
Yes, sir.
And those were some trips.
They were some good trips. JC did a lot. The JC's philosophy was that we try to do things for our community, but let's have a good time doing it. And through the course of the years, the JCs were, if you wanted something done in this town, you went to the JCs, because when I was president of JCs, we had 120 members. Wow. And it was a big young man's organization. I said at that time it was much more active in our community than the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
And that's what JC stood for, was Junior Chamber. And later it was JC, and then it became JAYCEE, JCs. But it was a great organization, and I still, to this day, many of my close friends, we were JCs together. I mean, and
first time I ever heard of them, I was running track at Woodrow, and they had the JC relays.
The JC relays.
It was one of the biggest meets around.
At that time, it was the second largest meet. Remember the Gazette, the Charleston. That was the biggest track meet in the state, and the JC relays was the second largest track meet in the state of West Virginia. Yes, it was.
Now, when and how did you get connected with? Well, let's say Mike's Toy Fund. I know you've been involved with Mike's Toy Fund.
JCs.
Through the JCs.
Through the JCs. JCs. And my first Mike's Toy Fund, I worked as a Boy Scout. And I was at Albert Allen's Boy Scouts at the First Baptist Church. And believe it or not, that's when the Mike's Toy Fund was held at the Memorial Building. And they did it in 3 shifts. In other words, you got a ticket that said that you came at 9 o'clock, and the next one said noon, and the next one would say 3 o'clock. And we did it in 3 shifts because the size of the building could not handle it. And then we moved to the rec building. At that point, I was a JC. And the JCs helped do things at Mike's Toy Fund. And then when Beckley newspaper sold out to Clay Communications, the JCs had become very active with it, and we were very concerned what would happen with Mike's Toy Fund with the ownership of the newspaper. And we sit down with Charlie Connors, who at that point, his first week on the job, he didn't even know what Mike's Toy Fund was. And we told him we did not want to see Mike's Toy Fund die, and we formed a committee, which he was more than glad to kind of turn it over to us. And at that point, we became a 501c3 nonprofit group of its own, and with an affiliation with Beckley newspaper. So this year coming up, which we still do Mike's Toy Fund, but we're having to do it in a different fashion, is the 91st year of Mike's Toy Fund. And you go back to
meet Mike?
Never met Mike. Although, believe it or not, he was a JC.
Really?
Ted McDowell was his name, and he was the editor of Beckley newspaper. And in one of his editorials, he wrote about going to the poor farm, which we had a poor farm here in Raleigh County, and how the kids there didn't have any toys for Christmas. So he put his editorial, anybody that would drop off toys at the newspaper, he would see to it that they made it to the poor farm. Well, that was the first Mike's Toy Fund. And people dropped off toys, took them to the poor. He took them to the poor farm, gave them to the kids, and from then it has evolved to what it was 2 years ago before the pandemic hit. And we had to make some changes in the way we do things. So last year we distributed $36,000 to smaller Christmas parties. And believe it or not, it worked very well. So this year, our goal is to distribute $40,000 to other Christmas groups that have smaller parties. And I personally, right now, I think maybe that is the future of Mike's Toy Fund, is to do that, because bringing that many people together into the armory on an annual basis with what's going on in the world today is a tough thing to do.
Let's see what. Now, somewhere along the line, I know you were involved with the Road Running Club, and that we got the K-Mart Series here in Beckley, and of course, Lance Armstrong was part of that.
Yes, he was.
At that time, he didn't have the notoriety of Greg LeMond or somebody like that, but he ended up being, whether he cheated or not, I don't know, but he ended up one of the greatest cyclists around. But how did you get the K-Mart Series?
Well, Tom Jarrett and I were riding bikes, and we went up to White Sulphur Springs. The first K-Mart, first one was called the Tour of West Virginia. And we went up, and it finished at the Greenbrier. So we went up to the Greenbrier and lobbied to get a leg of it in Beckley the following year. And we got an audience with Gaston Caperton, who loved cycling and loved outdoor activities. And he said, you guys are more enthusiastic about having an event than anybody we've had. So I'm going to give you all a leg of the West Virginia Classic next year. And he did. And we did a good job. And then it evolved to the K-Mart Classic. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, we hosted the biggest part of the whole K-Mart Classic here in Beckley. And when it was all said and done, when the race was over and Lance Armstrong had won in Charleston, they said, what did you like best about West Virginia? He said, I love the mountains and I love Beckley.
Wow. And
it made us feel real good. But Tom Jarrett and I lobbied to get that in Beckley. And again, we had 1 year of the West Virginia Classic, 2 years of the K-Mart Classic. Then K-Mart dropped out, and then they did the tour of West Virginia. And then it dissolved after Caperton went out of office. But we did have it here 4 years. And yes, Lance Armstrong was here 2 times. And the second time he came, the Lilly family at Lilly's Jewelers got us 2 Tag Heuer watches, one for each year, that we gave to the winner of the leg in Beckley. And to this day, Lance Armstrong is probably wearing one of those Tag Heuer watches that he won in Beckley, West Virginia. And I'll never forget the second year he came back. He said, I came back because I want another one of those watches. And he was a great guy. He's a little cocky, but I hate to say it, he could be. I mean, he deserved to be a little cocky.
Well, you guys tried to make it tough, and I know you changed the course a couple times. I know one time he went down Sandstone Mountain before they had the bridge.
That's right.
They turned around, came back up, then come up Beaver Avenue.
We went over into Hicks, West Virginia, over on the other side of Sandstone, and back up Hinton Mountain. You know, we didn't have anything to do with the course. They had the company that promoted the race that set the course. But Lance Armstrong, I'll never forget when the last time they came to Beckley, he was almost 15 minutes ahead of the second place bike. I mean, he was such a superior athlete. I guess, whether it was drug enhanced or not, at that time we don't know. But, he was quite a fella. And, afterwards, he stayed at the Ramada Inn. Remember the Ramada Inn on Harper Road? That's where all the cyclists stayed. But you got to understand, we had some of the best cyclists in the world here for the K-Mart Classic. Yeah. I mean, there were guys who led many stages of the Tour de France that were in Beckley. And to think that happened here was quite remarkable, to tell you the truth.
Well, I sat here in my backyard and watched them go by one day.
Yes.
That's when they come.
And they flew.
Yeah, oh gosh.
I mean, it was you could the wind come off these bikes. I mean, it was just amazing that we had that. But Lance Armstrong was quite a fella. I've still got a hat that he autographed for me.
Did you were you involved with the Great American Road Race or the?
Yeah, I've done that 3 times. We've had it here 3 times.
Okay.
First 2 times I chaired it. We had lunch stop, and this year we were given an overnight stop, and it was great. I don't know if you went downtown for it or not, but we had 109 cars, and these guys are just super individuals with some unbelievable automobiles. This year it was sponsored by the CVB, and they did an excellent job putting everything together, and we had a large time downtown. And again, that's a national event that came to our town. Uh-huh. And when we had hosted the Great American Race the first time, we thought that was absolutely wonderful because they very rarely ever go back to the same place twice. Then 5 years later, they called and said, we'd like to stop again in Beckley for lunch. And we said, oh my goodness, that's wonderful. And then when we got the call this time that we were put on an overnighter, that was even more of a compliment. So we've hosted it 3 times here in Beckley, which is it takes a large committee to pull it off, but Beckley has always been real good at doing that, and we don't have any trouble getting volunteers to help set it up. But it was a large evening in town this year to have them here.
Well, you've been into cars and stuff. You've shown cars, and I remember the one car you had that was in the play, Driving Miss Daisy.
I still have it.
Really?
I still have it.
What was that?
It's a 1948 Dodge that I've had since 1975. I bought it from a buddy of mine, David Dillon. I gave him $600 for it. I've had it longer than anything I've ever owned, but it's still sitting in the garage. And believe it or not, I got it out last week for the first time this year, and it's got 27,000 miles on it. And it's the only car that's ever been in the auditorium at Woodrow, and it wasn't supposed to be in there. I'll never forget.
I was surprised. We went to the play. Inez O'Brien was Miss Daisy, and
John Carl Baldwin was the old whippersnapper. He played as the chauffeur.
Okay.
And did a great job. But we snuck it in the auditorium, and I think it was Miller Hall, maybe was principal at that time, and I can't remember. Whoever it was Principal Woodrow, came in and said, "How did that car get in here?" And we used a rollback wrecker trailer to raise it up and bring it in the door. And he made us drain all the gas out of it, take the battery out of it, and put cardboard under it so it didn't leak on the stage floor. Yeah. And it was there for a week while they did the production of Driving Miss Daisy.
Now, I know, again, you were involved a lot with the Road Runners, and we used to have a meet on Thursday evenings and at Jimmy's place, and then started getting kind of crowded up there, so you started going to Calacino's with Dominic, and it's kind of interesting. You go up there on a Thursday, and he'd be watching these black and white television, and probably if he had any customers at all, he'd have one, and if he felt like fixing a pizza,
it was all about him.
Yeah, and if you got a drink, you'd have to leave the cap on the bar.
Figure out how much you owed him at the end of the day. When you think about the Roadrunners and how fortunate you and I were to have made the acquaintances with the characters that we got to know at Jimmy's place, the regulars there, and the guys that we ran with. Most of them who are no longer with us. There's so many of them who've passed away. But did we get to meet some characters or not?
Absolutely.
I want you to think about the hours that we spent at Jimmy's place. And, you talk about a great place. It kind of brings a tear to your eye when you think about it. But the guys that were in there that were, you had every walk of life came through that door and went out that door. And how many pizzas went out that door, and how many guys came up and told their wife, "I'm going to go get us a pizza," just so they could have a beer or two while the pizza was being made at Jimmy's place. And, you go back to guys like Martin Hajash, who's the first thing he always did when he went in to check to make sure there wasn't a paper bag on the bar with his name on it. And if those who don't know what I'm talking about, any of the regulars who passed away at Jimmy's, they put a paper bag on the bar with your name on it, and people put money in that paper bag, and then after the funeral, Louis Conte would see to it that the family got that paper bag full of money.
You're right. There were a lot of characters. I can remember, and when we were still going up there with the Roadrunners on Thursday, I remember one evening Ron Lane, who was one of the most obsessive runners we've ever had in the area.
Yes, he was, and great. Good runner. He lived to run.
He came in one night, and he'd been having some leg problems. He was on a cane, and he walked in. He talked a while, and then when he's getting ready to leave, somebody had, "Hey, Ron, good luck in that marathon Saturday." And he ran in a marathon.
Yeah, he did. You got to think, he was a student of running. He read every book, every magazine. He studied the sport of running. And the diet books, I never forget the time he went on a banana diet because he read somewhere that you couldn't eat enough bananas. He smelled like a monkey. But and Woozer was a great guy. But, there were so many guys. And you think about at that point, running was a fad. Mm-hmm. It really was truly a fad. But you think about on Canoa Street. You never went down Canoa Street that you didn't see 4, 5, 6, 10, 20 people running on Canal Street, because it was like people congregated at the Y or at the Memorial Building, and then our group met on Thursday. But you look at our running club, people came in from all over to run with us on Thursday. You get the group from Summersville that came in, from Charleston, Ken Doss coming down in from Boone County, and some of the guys that we ran with was just remarkable. That's why I'm crippled today. But we had so much fun.
Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't have mentioned Bruce Blankenship, who's still running.
Still runs.
And Ron McKinney still runs.
runs.
And I'd like to have $1 for every mile those guys have ran.
I can remember when, running wasn't for everybody. It was faddish. And a lot of guys would say, I want to join your all's road running club. What do I need to do? I said, well, you go buy a pair of shoes and get a pair of shorts, meet us on Thursday. And some of them would show up 2 or 3 times and they said, this is no fun, But then there were guys like Bruce who showed up and, you looked at Bruce and, man, this guy, I don't know if Bruce can hardly walk. How's he going to run? Guess what? He's still running. I mean, that's been 40 years, 50 years. Just unbelievable. And then you got guys like Jerry Herndon, who ran a marathon in every state in the United States and ran marathons in most countries. I mean, he went to countries and ran marathons where he couldn't even get in as a United States citizen. I mean, he would have to go. I don't know how he got in, but he ran marathons at the North Pole and the South Pole. And, guys like that you got to meet on there, Berman Caton. I mean, just think about Berman.
How many times he got lost?
That's exactly
He used to get lost in the racing.
But we were so
that
lucky.
reminds me one other thing. So let's go back.
Blue Loser's funeral.
Well, yeah, when we got lost to Ron Lane's funeral, I think.
His wife wanted he was buried down in, what's the name of that little town down in Monroe County?
Yeah, St. Peterstown.
Yeah, so Ron used to run from Beckley down to this little town in there. So she wanted us to take the pallbearers, who we were, to take his casket in the hearse, and the hearse was going to follow us, and we were going to run the route that he always ran. Well, we got lost, and I'll never forget. We got out, pulled in front of this house down there. Here we are, a station wagon full of pallbearers and a hearse with Woozer in it. And I went up to the door and knocked on the door and told them we were lost and we were looking for the cemetery so we could bury our buddy. And when we got to the cemetery, everybody had been waiting. Where have y'all been? Well, we kind of got lost.
Yeah, I was thinking that road was Leatherwood Road or something. It was. I can't
somewhere down, but we did. We got lost with Woozer's body.
But now you, in the last few years, you've kind of got involved in a mentoring program in the school system, and tell me a little bit about that.
Well, the Chamber of Commerce started a mentoring program at Cranberry. That's been 8 years ago, and Cranberry School was just a great school to work with, and they opened their arms to us come in doing a mentoring program, and there was 10 of us members of the Chamber of Commerce board who worked with children at the school. Most of us, we started off with one and ended up with 2 because it was just as easy to spend an extra half hour with a kid. And the mentoring program went real well while we were at Cranberry, and then advanced to where the kids moved on. But there are so many kids in our society today that don't have, and I hate to say it, I'm a pretty poor father figure, but they don't have any men in their life. And even at Cranberry School, the only gentleman in that school was the custodian. Mm-hmm. It was all women teachers. So you had a kid who was with their mother or their grandmother in so many cases who didn't have a male figure in their life. So it was great. I have 2 of the best kids you've ever seen. I still mentor Preston Cade, who is in his first year at Woodrow, and Jaheim Miller, who is in his last year at Stratton Middle. And these are 2 great young men who have bright futures, and it's been a true pleasure working with them. It really has been.
That's great.
So anybody who wants to be a mentor, don't hesitate. It's very rewarding.
How much time does that involve?
Well, it depends if you get started. The pandemic again has had an adverse effect on everything. So kind of you can't go to schools and do it like we used to. So we're pretty much doing it on out basis talking to them on the telephone. I used to I still do what I call walk and talk. I'll pick them up and we go just walk and talk. These kids need somebody to talk to other than a teacher or a grandmother or a parent. So it's very rewarding and one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done.
What's in the works for Pete Torrico?
I'm retired and I'm proud of it, and that's about it. I spend time with 2 grandkids as much as I can, and just to have a home in South Carolina. Don't go down there very much as I like to, but still I love Beckley, West Virginia.
There you go. Well, I got one more question. Can I get you back sometime? We're not done.
We're not done. We can talk about Jimmy's Place and Calcino's forever. And the Raleigh County Roadrunners, there's so many individuals that you and I have had the honor to meet. I mean, how many people have got to eat a Lyle burger? So we can talk about all those things like that. And we've been blessed, Wayne.
We have been, and I sure appreciate you coming and seeing us. And to everyone out there, check us out on Facebook, Google, Spotify. If you want to be on the show, everybody's got a story, and we'd love to have you. Just email me at awbennett50@gmail.com. And remember, if you ain't dead yet, you ain't done yet. Until next time, God bless you.